The next team I want to talk about is the Houston Rockets.
Okay.
Because the Houston Rockets, I expected them to take a leap this season. The Houston Rockets were a team that has drafted a lot of players recently, and they're all coming good in some respect, right? They're all starting to figure things out for the most part. We'll talk about that in a second as we talk about their playoff hopes. But I don't think anybody really expected them to necessarily end up in a spot where they are, in fifth place in the West. And for large swaths of this season, I mean, they were like second in the West for probably half the year. It felt like second or third, at least, in the West for probably half the year. And they've fallen off just like a little bit recently. And frankly, if you made me bet right now, I think they probably finish sixth. I think Golden State's probably going to catch them. But again, for them to make the playoffs this year, not the play-in, the playoffs, is a massive, massive jump and a massive leap to me that just says so many good things about what Ime Udoka is doing. Says so many good things about all of the different athletes that they have accumulated in Houston, from Amen Thompson to Tari Eason to even like guys like Jabari Smith who have missed time, and Jalen Green. Obviously Şengün has been fantastic. Whitmore has been up and down depending on the day, it feels like. And the crazy thing is about this Houston run, Fred VanVleet has not shot the ball well this year. Jalen Green continues to just be a roller coaster depending on the month. Like, I saw someone on Twitter say he's the like king of the last X Games stat.
Sure.
And that's right. I mean, he really is. Like, there are times where he's great for a stretch, and there are times where he's not very good for a stretch. I mean, Şengün is shooting under 50% from the field. Jabari Smith is shooting under 43% from the field. Tari Eason and Jabari have both only played 43 games.
Yep.
And still, we look up, and by the way, Fred VanVleet, who has missed, I think, 19 games. And if you would have told me that Fred VanVleet misses a quarter of the season and Reed Shepherd does not step up really into being like a backup point guard yet in the NBA, I would have said that they have no chance to go 500, frankly. Because I would have thought that in those games that Fred misses based off of last season, that they would have gone, like, given that he's missed 19, they would have gone like 3-16 in those games, in all honesty. And Fred is incredibly important to them, and I don't mean to separate him from the equation, but the fact that they have gotten such strong defensive infrastructure in place with Ime there is such an incredible, I think, tip of the cap to him, but also a tip of the cap to these young guys on this team that have just kind of figured out how to make it work.
That's what I was going to say. Yes, you give Ime credit, absolutely. But also you got to give credit to these players that they have. I mean, they've drafted guys with good defensive potential or made moves like the Dylan Brooks move. But Tari Eason, Amen Thompson, big-time defensive players. Şengün, we've talked about, like, positionally getting in the right spots, really being good, solid on that end of the floor. I will say, like, it will be interesting to see how the next couple weeks go. It looks like Fred may be back tonight, actually, as they play the Suns. But Amin had the rolled ankle where he's going to be out for 10 to 14 days. That was a few days ago. But yeah, whenever you talk about a team this young being this good defensively, it's really impressive. And for me, it's right. Like, I think the playoffs will be fascinating for Houston, right? And it always is, right? For a team like this, you always get this data collection from the playoffs. But for them, it's, what do these guys look in the playoffs? What can Jalen Green do in the play? Because, man, Sam, I watch Jalen Green sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I know it can be frustrating, but he does some things explosively, athletically, even nuance with the way he makes his drives and the way he contorts his body. And then I'll even be like, okay, but can he make passes? And then he'll go on a stretch where he makes 3 or 4 really good passing reads. And then, as you mentioned earlier, then sometimes the second half doesn't go great, or there's a few game stretch or something like that. But this will be awesome to see. What does Şengün look like in the playoffs? Jalen Green. How do
Yeah.
teams guard Amin Thompson in the playoffs? And how do they navigate that? Is he able to take advantage of it when they, don't guard him and those type of things? How does Tari look? So I'm with you that it's been an exciting season. I feel like we talk about the Rockets a lot, and I'm excited to see what this young group looks like in the playoffs. Hopefully, Fred is healthy, Brooks is healthy, because those guys kind of keep it together where you're not just relying on the young core.
Yeah, so I just did quick math. Without Fred VanVleet this year, the Rockets are 10-9 somehow. Like that is just such a testament to a team that's fighting. You have also brought up Amen here, and I brought up Amen a little bit earlier. Since entering the starting lineup for Amen Thompson, he's averaging 16 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.4 blocks, shooting 55% from the field and 69% from the line. He's only getting to the line 4.3 times. I think that's the number where like his game is going to explode moving forward. He's going to figure out like really how to get to the line and really how to like use his athleticism to stop start and like decelerate in addition to accelerating in the way that he does all the time. And he is going to be just like a monster to me. The leap for Amen this year has been by far the biggest reason for their success. Alperin has been great. Don't get me wrong. And Alperin, made the All-Star team, and I was all for that. You were all for that. He hasn't played drastically differently than what he did last year. Amen going from what he was last year to what he is this year, where he is to me very clearly the second best player in that draft class now. It's a massive jump. He looks like he's going to be a future All-Star moving forward.
Yeah, he's awesome. I may have had him on my short list as well of just whenever we talk about players because of what he's done this season. And, it's really interesting. I'm excited to go back and look at my pre-draft evaluation of him and his brother, just because it was like, it was a tough one for me and kind of figuring out these guys that don't really shoot it really well, but you knew we were going to be 1% athletes, and he's come in and really figured it out. One thing I'm interested with this team in the playoffs too, Sam, is like, sometimes I feel like Dylan Brooks can get a little shot happy. Sometimes Jalen Green can get a little shot happy. I'm interested to see the hierarchy of this team in the playoffs when who does the ball run through? Can Fred calm everybody down? Do guys take the right shots? Where does Jabari play into this? Like, I'm really, I know I keep going back to this point, and I don't want to like overlook the fact that it's been an awesome regular season and an awesome run for them. I just continue to find myself, because I'm so intrigued by them, to see what it looks like on that stage and where guys and how guys settle into that stage.
Yeah, and like speaking of Amen and Şengün, right? Like I think people will look at it and be like, oh yeah, like their spacing is going to be totally screwed because neither of those guys can shoot, but they play really well off of each other because Şengün is really good at playing out high. Amen really good at back cutting off of cutting off of Alperin's space really, really well. So I look at that and I see a way where this does work. To me, it's more, I don't really trust like Jalen Green as like a primary shot creator for them, because as much as like you can throw the ball into Alperin and try to play through that as a hub, I think it's pretty difficult to do that when he is not quite efficient enough as a scorer yet. He is a pretty good decision maker. It's more that if you can kind of just say, okay, we're going to play one-on-one, and we're going to have a massive body wall up against Alperin and try to just make him shoot over the top with those touch shots. I think that it can be really, really hard to play through that in the playoffs. Figuring out like how much they can get out of Jalen Green on a night-to-night basis. I mean, that honestly, like Jalen Green is probably one of the most important players to his team in the playoffs this year, because he is going to end up having to take a ton of big shots. And I don't really know that it's like over a long stretch of time, I don't trust him to make them consistently. But if he goes on one of the hot runs that he does from time to time, they could surprise somebody. You know what I mean?
More importantly than making big shots, he's gonna have to make big decisions, right? Like it's gonna be, two come at you, are you willing to give it up? Can you make the right read out of two? Like, even if you are
Yeah.
willing to pass it, do you make the right read out of it so it gets swing to Fred in the corner and he knocks down the shot? Or, whatever. You see a min cutting and you throw the lob as opposed to forcing up a mid-range floater or something that is highly contested. So that's what it's going to be for Jalen Green, because I think I'm with you. At least there's going to be stretches of, and that's what I say, like, what is the hierarchy of this team in the playoffs? Does Fred do it because he's the vet and they're in the playoffs? Do you give it to Alperen and Jalen and Amin because they're the young guys and you want to figure it out? Does Dylan Brooks decide he wants to do it for a couple games? Like what is that going to look like? But I think it's really important data for them to get, because it is an ascending team. And these young guys, I think, are getting to a point where like they're ready. And then that data collection lets you know, okay, we can build around these three, may need to move these one or two, and this is the type of player we need to bring in to complement all of them. And ultimately for the Rockets, that's what's most important at this point in their build to a contender.
Yeah. No, I think that's dead on. Okay. I think where I'm at with them is they are probably a first round exit this year, but even being a top 6 seed is a massive surprise and a massive like feather in their cap. And we'll see what they do in the offseason. Can they go out and get like a real primary number 1 option? But their defensive infrastructure and ability to like figure out a way to make the Şengün Amen spacing work and also get that growth from Amen this season. These are all just massive, enormous wins. Like Amen, I don't know. I think he's going to make an all NBA team. I'll say that. I don't know if he's going to be like the best number 1 option in the world or anything, but I think he can make an all NBA team being a number 2, as we've seen with guys like, Jaylen Brown and other players throughout recent history. Like the Cavs have a good shot to get 2 all NBA guys this year. I think Amen can be that guy who is that, tremendous piece all over the court. That's like a chess piece that helps you. If you need more ball handling, he can run point. If you need a backdoor cutter, he can play at the 4. If you need somebody to guard 4s, he can guard 4s. If you need somebody to guard at the point of attack, he can do that. Like he is really like almost going to be the preeminent chess piece player across the league here moving forward to me.
I would just say, because I don't know if we're going to talk about any of these other teams, the way the Western Conference is seated right now would be amazing. I think a Rockets Grizzlies first round matchup would be awesome. Like I would sign up for that. Like that Rockets defense against that Grizzlies offense that we've talked about, and then the Warriors Lakers in the first round would just be incredible with how both of those teams have ascended since the trade deadline. So I would be all for those series, and I think Houston is going to be a tough out. Even I would probably guess like off the dome right now that I would guess they don't get out of the first round. But with that defense, and if Jalen Green gets on a heater or Şengün or something, they get the right matchup, they're going to be really tough for somebody and can absolutely win a series if they figure that offensive stuff out.